First, in the name of the Honourable Marama Davidson.
Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable James Shaw.
On behalf of the member, does he agree with Associate Professor of Law Teresa Dunworth, who said about the International Court of Justice ruling in the case against Israel under the Genocide Convention that New Zealand, quote, has a legal obligation to do what it can to ensure that Israel complies with the court's orders, end quote? If so, what action is the government taking to fulfil its legal obligation?
Right Honourable Winston Peters.
Mr. Speaker, it's important to make clear that the International Court of Justice has not made any determination of genocide in this case, and indeed has not released any final ruling on the matter. What has happened so far is that the ICJ has released a provisional ruling and has taken the substantive issues under advisement. That said, of course, all countries have a general obligation to prevent and punish genocide. New Zealand has consistently called on Israel to comply with the binding interim measures, that is, take all reasonable steps not to commit genocide, as issued by the International Court on 26 January 2024.
Will he unequivocally condemn Israel's use of...
Point of order, the Honourable David Seymour.
Mr. Speaker, I refer to Standing Order 3942, which says that a member may ask a question on behalf of another member who is absent, but the member in whose name the question is has just emerged and is now present in the chamber, and I just wonder if it's possible for another member to keep asking the question when that member is here.
Good point.
Yeah, that's
good point.
It's a very good point. It's absolutely right.
Yeah.
The member in whose name the question was not present when the question was called. We're now into supplementary questions, and as the member knows, any member from the House can ask supplementary questions. So the point is right. The circumstances have changed. Are you speaking in? Are you calling that, or I can't hear you from here? The Honourable James Shaw.
Will he unequivocally condemn Israel's use of starvation as a weapon of war, which has resulted in the deaths of at least 10 children so far by starvation?
Mr. Speaker, New Zealand is meeting its obligations under the Genocide Convention, including by clearly and consistently stating its position publicly. Since the start of the conflict, New Zealand has consistently called on all parties to comply with international law in national statements and in statements alongside Australia. And since the ICJ ruling, provisional ruling, I have engaged with representatives of around 50 countries, and developments in Gaza have been a regular topic of discussion, and none of them, of those 50 countries, are left in any doubt as to what New Zealand's position is. For the members' benefit, New Zealand has been clear from the outset that the protection of civilians is paramount. The price of defeating Hamas cannot be continued at the suffering of Palestinian people.
Will the government intervene as a third party in the case against Israel under the Genocide Convention now that Israel has failed to comply with the court orders, including by obstructing basic aid into Gaza and deliberately opening fire on civilians who are seeking aid?
This is what's happened. This is what happens when one goes to academia for an expert opinion, and academia has never been in a court of law. That is not what the ICJ ruled, and that's not still in advance. That's still in advance in terms of that final decision as we speak.
Yep. Amateur out.
Call on the member Tiano.
Will he guarantee the continuation of New Zealand's annual funding for the United Nations Relief and Works Agency as the main provider of humanitarian aid in Gaza?
I want to thank that member for that question. The reality is that, as the previous government had said, the next tranche is not due until the middle of this year, which gives us time to observe the full-scale inquiry being conducted by the United Nations at this point in time. But that said, we have gone and supported other agencies doing the same kind of work, bearing in mind that UNRWA is a serious component, and to operate it properly is essential because there's no other possible replacement right here, right now, for that organisation.
Supplementary. Does he think it is appropriate for the government to continue diplomatic relations with Israel, including hosting the Israeli ambassador, while Israel fails to abide by its obligations under the ICJ decision and international humanitarian law?
Well, again, when the ICJ brings out a ruling, I suggest people read it carefully and maybe take legal advice as to what it means, because the inference in that question is that the findings were not as the international community has recognised them where Israel is concerned.
Supplementary, Debbie Nauru-Packer.
Tēnā koe te pika. Will he consider introducing an Israel sanctions bill to Parliament to send a clear message that Aotearoa will not tolerate war crimes and genocide, just as we did in response to Russia's invasion of Ukraine?
With respect to that question, a previous Labour government looked at that as an overall political change in our law and decided against it. And all of a sudden that has changed now. Those matters are under consideration, but at this point in time, this government has made no such decision.